The billionaire hired me to pretend to be his fiancée. I never expected to fall for his brother instead. Have you ever signed a contract only to realize your heart had other plans? If you've ever found yourself caught between what your heart wants and what you promised, like this video and subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Before we begin, this is love from my heart to you. Or maybe, just a small love letter to say thank you. Once upon a time, this channel fell in love. Not with fairy tales, but with the people who believe in them. The ones who cry during the quiet parts. Who pause to feel a heartbeat between the lines. Who still believe that love, even complicated, flawed, impossible love, can be real. Love Enchanted was created for you. The romantic. The hopeful. The heart that's been broken and still dares to open again. So if you're here, you're not just watching a story. You're part of one. Stay with us, for stories that ache, heal, and remind us why love is always worth the risk. The black Mercedes pulled through wrought iron gates as Sophia Lane clutched the leather portfolio in her lap, her fingers tracing the edge of the document inside. One signature. 6 figures. 3 days of pretending. Just breathe, she whispered to herself, watching the sprawling stone estate emerge through the morning mist. It's just acting. But the weight of the diamond on her finger felt heavier than any prop should. Final notice. Sophia stared at the bold red letters on her studio's eviction notice, the same day her last client had cancelled. 2 years of building her event planning business, gone. Her phone buzzed with another overdraft alert. I need someone convincing, the voice on the other end of the call had said. Alexander Stone, billionaire CEO of Stone International, whose face graced every business magazine. Someone who can charm my family for 1 weekend while I secure my inheritance. His eyes had been cold when they met at his Manhattan office. My father is retiring. He'll only hand over the company to a family man. I don't have time for actual relationships. He slid the contract across his desk. $100,000. All you have to do is convince my family we're in love. Sophia's hand had trembled as she reached for the pen. What's the catch? Complete discretion. Convincing performance. His eyes narrowed. And stay away from my brother. The car stopped at the entrance of the estate. A butler opened her door as Sophia stepped out, her simple blue dress a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding her. Mississippi Lane. Alexander appeared at the top of the marble steps, perfectly tailored in a charcoal suit. For the benefit of watching eyes, he smiled warmly and took her hand. Welcome home, darling. His whisper was ice against her ear. Remember, 100,000 reasons to be convincing. As he led her inside, Sophia caught a glimpse of a figure watching from the garden. Tall, with intense eyes that seemed to see right through her charade. Who's that? She asked. Alexander's grip tightened. That's Eli. My brother. The one person who could ruin everything. The Stone estate sprawled across 30 acres of manicured gardens and old-growth forest. As Alexander guided Sophia through the grand foyer, his public persona shifted seamlessly between cold businessman and doting fiancée. The East Wing houses the family quarters, he explained, his voice low. Father's suite is at the end of the hall, avoid it unless specifically invited. Sophia nodded, memorizing every detail. The marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers that had likely witnessed generations of Stone family power plays. Oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their eyes following her as if they knew she didn't belong. Your background story, Alexander continued, leading her to a private sitting room. We met at the Metropolitan Museum Gala 6 months ago. You were coordinating the event. I was captivated by your efficiency and charm. Third date was in Paris. I proposed at sunset on my yacht last month. Yacht proposal. How original, Sophia muttered. Alexander's eyes narrowed. Careful. My family expects a certain enthusiasm from the woman who captured the heart of New York's most eligible bachelor. He handed her a tablet containing photos of them together, expertly photoshopped memories of a relationship that never existed. Study these. Know the dates, the locations. Miranda will test you. Miranda, my cousin, corporate lawyer, father's favorite niece, and the person most likely to expose you. Alexander straightened his already perfect tie. She wanted the company for herself. A bell chimed somewhere in the depths of the house. That's the first dinner call. You have 30 minutes to prepare. He assessed her simple dress with a critical eye. Wear the blue Valentino I had delivered to your room. Father appreciates appropriate attire. Left alone, Sophia exhaled shakily. The Valentino dress hanging in her closet probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. This world of casual wealth and calculated appearances was foreign territory. But she'd coordinated enough high society events to know how to play the game. As she changed, Sophia rehearsed their love story, adding small details to make it believable. The way Alexander supposedly took his coffee, black, no sugar. His favorite book, he didn't read fiction. The song that played during their first dance, something classical, she decided, because Alexander seemed incapable of enjoying anything that wasn't curated for status. The dinner bell rang again as Sophia descended the grand staircase. Alexander waited at the bottom, offering his arm with practiced precision. Remember, he whispered, you're madly in love with me. The dining room could have hosted a state dinner. Charles Stone sat at the head of the table, silver-haired, imposing, with the same sharp features as his son's but none of Alexander's coldness. Instead, his eyes held calculation and amusement. So this is the woman who finally tamed my son, Charles said, rising slightly as Sophia entered. Mr. Stone, it's an honor to meet you, Sophia replied, extending her hand with the perfect balance of confidence and respect. Charles bypassed her hand and embraced her instead. Call me Charles. We're family now, aren't we? From the corner of her eye, Sophia caught Alexander's approving nod. Or are we? A sharp voice cut through the moment. A woman with a sleek bob and Alexander's calculating eyes approached, champagne flute in hand. Cousin Alex has never mentioned you before last week, Sophia. Rather sudden, isn't it? Miranda, Alexander acknowledged tensely. Sophia and I preferred privacy until things were certain. Miranda's smile didn't reach her eyes. How convenient. Charles clapped his hands. Enough business talk. Where's Eli? He promised to join us tonight. Probably lost track of time with his brooding and journaling, Miranda said, rolling her eyes. Alexander's jaw tightened. He knows how important this weekend is. As if summoned by his name, the door opened. Sophia turned and felt her breath catch. The man from the garden entered, tall, with Alexander's features but none of his polish. Where Alexander was all sharp edges and control, Eli moved with a quiet intensity. His button-down shirt was rolled at the sleeves, revealing tanned forearms and a writer's calloused hands. His eyes found Sophia's immediately. Sorry I'm late, he said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. Got caught up in writing. Eli, Charles beamed. Meet Sophia, your brother's fiancée. Eli approached, studying her with unsettling directness. So you're the woman who supposedly captured my brother's heart. The emphasis on supposedly wasn't subtle. It's nice to meet you, Sophia managed, extending her hand. Instead of shaking it, Eli turned her palm upward, noticing the calluses from years of hands-on event work. His eyebrow raised slightly. These weren't the hands of someone who married for money. Interesting, was all he said. Dinner proceeded with excruciating politeness. Charles dominated conversation with questions about their relationship, which Alexander answered with rehearsed perfection. Sophia added details they'd practiced, weaving in enough authentic emotion to seem genuine. But every time she looked up, Eli was watching her, not with suspicion like Miranda, but with curiosity. As if he were reading a story and trying to understand the protagonist's true motivations. Later that night, Sophia stood on her balcony, finally alone. The weight of performance had exhausted her. Below in the moonlit garden, a figure moved, Eli, walking alone with a notebook in hand. He stopped suddenly, looking up as if sensing her gaze. Their eyes met across the distance. Sophia stepped back into the shadows of her room, heart racing inexplicably. $100,000, she reminded herself. Just 3 days of pretending. But as she slipped between silk sheets worth more than her monthly rent, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that Eli Stone had already seen through her performance, and the most dangerous part was that some small part of her wanted him to. Sleep eluded Sophia. At 5 a.m., she gave up trying and slipped into jeans and a light sweater, her own clothes, not the designer wardrobe Alexander had provided. Outside, dawn painted the gardens in soft gold and lavender. The air smelled of roses and freshly cut grass, a welcome respite from the suffocating perfection inside. She wandered down a stone path, finding solace in the absence of performance. Here, with no audience, she could breathe. "You're up early." Sophia startled. Eli sat on a stone bench beneath a massive oak tree, a steaming mug beside him, notebook open on his lap. Morning light caught in his dark hair, highlighting strands of copper she hadn't noticed the night before. "So are you," she replied, instinctively smoothing her hair. "I'm always up at dawn. Best time to write." He closed his notebook. "Best time to be honest, too. No one's watching." Something in his tone made her pulse quicken. "What are you writing?" "A novel about people who pretend to be something they're not." His eyes held hers. "Fascinating subject, don't you think?" Sophia's mouth went dry. "Fiction can be revealing." "That's what I find interesting about you, Sophia." He gestured to the bench beside him. "You're the first real thing I've seen in this house in years." She hesitated, then sat, leaving careful distance between them. "You don't know me. I know my brother doesn't love you." Eli said it matter-of-factly, without accusation. "And I'm fairly certain you don't love him either." Panic flared in her chest. Don't. His voice softened. "Whatever game you two are playing, I'm not your enemy." "It's not a game," she insisted, the lie bitter on her tongue. Eli leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Your eyes dart to the left when you lie. And you flinch when he touches you, not from fear, but discomfort. Like wearing shoes that don't quite fit." Heat crept up her neck. "You're very observant. Journalist's habit." He offered his mug. "Coffee. It's better than whatever imported blend they serve inside." The mug was handmade ceramic, chipped at the rim. Sophia accepted it, their fingers brushing. The simple contact sent an unexpected current through her. "Why are you here, Sophia? Really?" His question held no judgment, only genuine curiosity. For a moment, she considered telling him everything. The contract, her failing business, the desperation that had led her to this charade. Something about Eli made her want to be honest. Instead, she took a sip of coffee. "It's complicated. It always is." His smile was unexpected and transformative, creating creases around his eyes that Alexander's face never showed. "But for what it's worth, you deserve better than my brother. You don't get along. We used to." Shadows crossed his face. Before he decided power was worth more than principles. Before she could ask what he meant, gravel crunched on the path. Alexander approached, his casual attire still somehow formal, pressed khakis and a polo that probably cost more than Sophia's rent. "There you are." His smile was perfect, his eyes cold as they flicked between them. "I've been looking everywhere." "Just getting some fresh air," Sophia explained, standing quickly. "And conversation," Eli added, making no move to rise. "Your fiancée is fascinating, Alex. You never mentioned how much she loves 19th century Russian literature." Sophia blinked in confusion, they'd never discussed books. Alexander's arm slid possessively around her waist. "One of the many things I adore about her. Father's requesting our presence for breakfast, darling. His fingers dug into her side. A warning. Of course. She smiled brightly, slipping back into character. It was nice talking with you, Eli. As Alexander led her away, Eli called after them. Sophia, if you ever want to continue our discussion about Tolstoy's view on authentic relationships, you know where to find me. Alexander's grip tightened. Stay away from my brother, he muttered once they were out of earshot. He's trying to sabotage this. He was just being friendly. Eli doesn't do friendly without motive. Alexander stopped, turning her to face him. Remember our agreement. 1 weekend, perfect performance, significant payday. Don't let him complicate things. As they approached the house, Sophia glanced back. Eli still watched from beneath the oak tree, his expression unreadable. She couldn't explain the pull she felt toward him, or why his coffee had tasted more real than anything in this mansion of illusions. Have you ever felt an instant connection with someone you shouldn't? Tell me in the comments below. The Stone family dining room transformed in the evening, crystal glasses catching candlelight, silver gleaming against dark mahogany. Sophia sat beside Alexander, hyper-aware of Eli across the table. She'd successfully avoided him since their garden encounter, but couldn't ignore the electricity that charged the air between them. Charles Stone raised his glass. To family reunions and new beginnings. The tension between the brothers was palpable as they clinked glasses with mechanical politeness. Sophia, Charles turned to her, has Alexander told you about the family business? Some, she answered carefully. He's passionate about expanding the media division. Charles nodded approvingly. Stone International began as a small newspaper. My father believed in truth above all else. His gaze shifted to Eli. Some of us still do. Some of us recognize that business evolves, Alexander countered smoothly. Sentiment doesn't pay shareholders. Eli set down his fork. Integrity isn't sentiment, Alex. Says the man who abandoned his responsibilities to play war correspondent, Miranda interjected, swirling her wine. Sophia glanced at Eli, whose expression had hardened. You were a war journalist. For 7 years, Charles answered proudly before Eli could speak. Middle East, Ukraine, Sudan. His coverage of the refugee crisis won a Pulitzer. Until he quit without warning, Alexander added. Left the family business when we needed him most. Eli's knuckles whitened around his glass. I left when you decided profit margins were more important than reporting the truth. The Westlake mining exposé, Miranda explained to Sophia with feigned helpfulness. Eli wanted to run a story that would have tanked our biggest advertiser. They were poisoning a water supply and bribing officials to cover it up. Eli's voice remained controlled, but his eyes burned. People were dying. And we handled it through proper channels, Alexander countered. You buried it, Eli shot back. Then accepted their advertising dollars. Charles cleared his throat. Ancient history. Eli has found his calling as a novelist now. His first book comes out this fall. What's it about? Sophia asked, genuinely curious. For the first time that evening, Eli's expression softened as his eyes met hers. A journalist who discovers that the greatest war isn't fought on battlefields, but in everyday choices between truth and comfort. Something in his words resonated deep within her. Before she could respond, Alexander's hand covered hers possessively. Enough shop talk, Alexander redirected. Sophia and I are considering Italy for the honeymoon. Father, you still have that villa in Positano. The conversation shifted, but Sophia couldn't shake the weight of Eli's gaze or the story behind it. Later that evening, seeking escape from Alexander's business calls, Sophia wandered into the library. Rain lashed against tall windows as thunder rumbled in the distance. She ran her fingers along leather-bound spines, breathing in the comforting scent of old books. A manuscript lay open on a desk by the window, pages marked with handwritten notes. Curiosity drew her closer. The title page read, "The Price of Silence," by Eli Stone. She knew she shouldn't read it. Yet something compelled her to turn the page. She signed the contract with steady hands, though inside she trembled. One signature to secure her future, to silence her conscience. The weight of the pen was nothing compared to the weight of what she was agreeing to forget. Sophia's breath caught. The words felt eerily familiar, as if Eli had somehow seen into her soul. "Find what you're looking for?" She jumped, the manuscript falling from her hands. Eli stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. It's fine." He crossed the room, retrieving the fallen pages. "What did you think?" "It's beautiful." Honesty slipped out before she could stop it. "And painful. The best truths usually are." His eyes studied her. "Like whatever truth you're hiding behind that engagement ring." Before she could respond, the lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the library into darkness. Thunder crashed directly overhead. "Perfect timing," Eli muttered. His phone flashlight illuminated his face from below. "Power goes out at least once every storm. Generator should kick in soon." Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the room in stark white. In that flash, Sophia saw vulnerability in Eli's eyes that matched her own. "You don't love him," Eli said quietly in the returning darkness. Not a question this time. The darkness made honesty easier. "No." "Then why? Why did you really leave Stone International?" she countered. Silence stretched between them. Then, "There was a girl. In Aleppo. 9 years old." His voice grew distant. "I promised I'd tell her story. That people would know what happened to her family." "What happened?" "Alexander killed the story. Said it wasn't marketable. Too political." Bitterness edged his words. "I watched her die believing her truth would be heard." The generator hummed to life, soft lights gradually returning. Eli stood closer than she'd realized, close enough that she could see the pain etched in the lines around his eyes. "I couldn't stay after that," he finished. "Couldn't keep pretending principles were optional." Understanding bloomed between them, two people trapped by different circumstances but the same essential conflict. "Your turn," he said softly. "What's Alexander holding over you?" The moment hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Sophia opened her mouth, truth on the tip of her tongue. The library door swung open. Alexander stood framed in the doorway, his expression darkening as he took in their proximity. "Power's back," he announced unnecessarily. "Sophia, a word?" In Alexander's suite, his control slipped for the first time. "I warned you about him," he hissed, pacing. "Whatever he told you." "He told me about Aleppo," she interrupted. "About the story you killed." Alexander's laugh was cold. "He's always been a bleeding heart. Business requires pragmatism." "It requires ethics," she countered. "Careful." His voice lowered dangerously. "Remember paragraph 7 of our agreement. Any action that jeopardizes the successful outcome forfeits all compensation." Fear coiled in her stomach. Her entire future depended on that money. "One more day," Alexander reminded her. "Tomorrow night, Father announces the succession plan. Play your part, get your money, disappear." He straightened his cuffs. Simple. But as Sophia returned to her room, nothing felt simple anymore. The manuscript's words echoed in her mind. The weight of the pen was nothing compared to the weight of what she was agreeing to forget. Outside her window, through the diminishing rain, she could see Eli in the garden again. This time, when he looked up, she didn't hide. Their eyes locked across the distance, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Some connections couldn't be explained by logic or dismissed by contracts. Some truths demanded to be heard, regardless of the cost. Morning sunlight glittered across the lake behind the Stone estate. The family tradition, Charles had announced at breakfast, was a day of sailing followed by a lakeside picnic. Perfect weather to welcome Sophia properly into the family. Now, standing on the dock in a borrowed sundress, Sophia watched Alexander expertly prepare the smaller of two sailboats. Nearby, Eli readied the second vessel, his movements equally confident but less showy. "Lady's choice," Charles called out, clapping his hands together. "Sophia, which captain would you prefer for your maiden voyage on Stone Lake?" Alexander's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. Eli paused, waiting for her answer with unreadable expression. Sophia began. "She'll sail with me, of course," Alexander interjected smoothly, extending his hand toward her. "We've been planning this all week, haven't we, darling?" The lie slid easily from his lips. Sophia forced a smile, taking his hand as she stepped carefully into the boat. "Of course. Miranda can join Eli then," Charles decided, oblivious to the undercurrents. "I'll follow in the motorboat to capture some photos for the announcement." As they pushed off from the dock, Alexander's public mask slipped momentarily. "That was close," he muttered, adjusting the sail with practiced efficiency. "Father's testing us." "Testing what?" "Our compatibility. Our story." The boat caught wind, cutting through the water. "He's always believed you can tell everything about a relationship by how a couple handles a sailboat." Sophia gripped the side as the vessel tilted. "And how are we doing?" Alexander's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Follow my lead, anticipate my movements, don't rock the boat." Literally, or figuratively. For the next hour, Sophia played her part perfectly, laughing at Alexander's jokes, admiring his sailing prowess, posing for Charles's distant camera. But her eyes kept drifting to the other sailboat, where Eli handled the craft with quiet confidence while seemingly engaged in intense conversation with Miranda. "Stop watching them," Alexander warned under his breath. "I'm not. You are." He adjusted the sail sharply, causing the boat to lurch. "Whatever he's told you, remember he abandoned this family when it mattered most." Something in his tone made Sophia look at him. Really look. Behind the polished facade, she glimpsed something unexpected. Hurt. "You miss him," she realized aloud. Alexander's jaw tightened. "We were close once." Before he decided his principles were more important than family loyalty. "Maybe principles and loyalty shouldn't be mutually exclusive," she suggested carefully. For a moment, vulnerability flickered across Alexander's face, so brief she might have imagined it. "That's not how the real world works, Sophia." His voice softened. "Not everyone has the luxury of idealism." The glimpse of genuine emotion complicated her growing resentment toward him. Perhaps there was more to Alexander Stone than cold ambition. The moment shattered as a gust of wind caught their sail. Alexander called out instructions, his mask of control firmly back in place. The picnic was laid out on a pristine stretch of shoreline, white linen, crystal glasses, and catered delicacies that looked too perfect to eat. Sophia sat beside Alexander, playing her role while acutely aware of Eli's presence across the blanket. "A toast," Charles raised his glass, "to new beginnings and the future of Stone International." As glasses clinked, Charles's phone rang. He checked it, frowning. "Excuse me, everyone. Board emergency." He stood, straightening his linen pants. "Miranda, I need your legal expertise." Miranda followed him toward the house, leaving Sophia suddenly alone with the brothers. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "I should check on dessert," Alexander finally said, standing. "Father will want his favorite tart when he returns." As he walked toward the catering tent, Eli moved to sit beside Sophia. "Enjoying your performance?" he asked quietly. Heat rushed to her face. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." His eyes held hers. "The question is why? What does my brother have that's worth selling yourself short?" "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." His hand moved toward hers but stopped short of touching. Because the woman I've glimpsed beneath the act deserves better than being another stone acquisition. The genuine concern in his voice nearly broke her resolve. It's complicated. It's a contract, isn't it? His insight startled her. Financial arrangement. The perfect fiancé to secure his inheritance. Sophia's silence was confirmation enough. How much? He asked, voice tight. She looked away. Enough to save everything I've worked for. And what about what you're worth? The intensity in his question made her meet his eyes again. Your integrity. Your chance at real happiness. Not everyone has the luxury of principles, she echoed Alexander's words, though they tasted bitter. That's my brother talking. Eli moved closer, his voice dropping. The Sophia I've seen glimpses of, the real one, she values truth. She recognizes authenticity when she sees it. His hand finally covered hers, warm and steady. Unlike Alexander's possessive grip, Eli's touch felt like an invitation, not a claim. Whatever he's paying you, Eli continued, it's not worth losing yourself. The words struck her core. For a moment, Sophia nearly confessed everything. The contract details, her failing business, the eviction notice. The words rose to her lips. Dessert is served. Alexander's voice cut through the moment as he approached with a tray. His eyes locked on their hands, still touching. Sophia pulled away quickly, guilt and confusion washing over her. Eli stood, tension radiating from him. I should check on father, he said stiffly, walking away. Alexander set down the tray with deliberate calm. You're playing with fire, Sophia. We were just talking. My brother doesn't just talk with beautiful women. His voice was controlled but edged with warning. One more day. That's all we need. As Alexander outlined the evening's plans, dinner, drinks, Charles's announcement, Sophia nodded automatically, her thoughts elsewhere. She watched Eli's retreating figure, feeling pulled in two impossible directions. One path led to financial security and the business she'd sacrificed everything to build. The other led toward something she couldn't name but recognized deep in her soul: authenticity, connection, possibility. Both paths required sacrifice. Both would leave her with regrets. And time was running out to choose. The afternoon sun slipped behind clouds as Sophia retreated to her room to prepare for the evening's festivities. A knock at her door revealed a hotel-style garment bag. Inside hung an elegant black gown with a handwritten note, for tonight's announcement. As she zipped the perfectly tailored dress, another knock came. This time, Miranda stood in the hallway, her smile sharp as a paper cut. May I come in? Girl talk before the big night. Sophia hesitated but stepped aside. Miranda entered, assessing the room with calculating eyes. Beautiful dress. Alexander always did have impeccable taste. Miranda trailed her fingers along the dresser. Though I'm curious why a successful event planner would need a completely new wardrobe for a weekend visit. Sophia's pulse quickened. I travel light. Miranda picked up a silver-framed photo of Sophia and Alexander, one of the professionally edited images he'd provided. Funny, I don't recall you at the Bergman Charity Gala. I was on the committee, you see. It was a large event. Indeed. Miranda set down the frame. Just as I don't recall any mention of you until last week. Strange for a 6-month relationship, wouldn't you say? Sophia busied herself with earrings. Alexander values privacy. Alexander values winning. Miranda moved closer. I've known him since we were children. He's never put anyone before the company. Yet suddenly, he's madly in love. People change. Stone men don't. Miranda's voice hardened. Whatever arrangement you two have, I will discover it. Charles deserves to know who he's really handing his company to. After Miranda left, Sophia sank onto the bed, hands trembling. The walls were closing in. She needed air, space to think. Slipping out a side door, she found herself on a garden path illuminated by solar lights. The evening air carried the scent of rain-washed earth and approaching night. She walked blindly, mind racing through scenarios, each ending with exposure, humiliation, and financial ruin. Running away? Sophia startled. Eli stood on a small footbridge spanning a decorative stream, moonlight silvering his profile. Just needed to breathe, she admitted. He nodded as if he understood completely. Family events have that effect. Especially when you don't belong in the family, she said before she could stop herself. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps. He extended his hand. Walk with me. She should refuse. Return to the house. Prepare for her performance. Instead, she took his hand. They followed the path deeper into the gardens, neither speaking until they reached a small gazebo overlooking the lake. Moonlight danced across the water's surface, creating an otherworldly glow. I used to hide here as a kid, Eli said, leaning against the railing. Whenever Father and Alexander were plotting company strategy. You weren't interested in the family business? I believed in what it stood for, truth, integrity, giving voice to the voiceless. His profile was etched in moonlight and shadow. That changed after my mother died. I'm sorry, Sophia said softly. When did you lose her? I was 16. Alexander was 18. Pain flickered across his features. Cancer. Brutal and quick. Father buried himself in work. Alexander became his shadow, desperate for approval. And you? I ran. Took my camera and found stories that needed telling. His voice grew distant. In war zones, everything is stripped to essentials. Truth matters. Integrity matters. Until Aleppo, she guessed. He nodded. Her name was Yasmin, 9 years old. Her entire family killed in an airstrike funded by companies advertising in our publications. His hands gripped the railing. I promised her I'd tell the world what happened. Instead, Alexander and the board buried the story to protect advertising revenue. The raw pain in his voice made her reach for his hand. I'm sorry. I couldn't stay after that. Couldn't keep pretending principles were negotiable. His fingers intertwined with hers. That's why I can't understand what you're doing, Sophia. The woman I see beneath the act wouldn't sell herself this way. The genuine concern in his voice cracked something inside her. My business is failing, she confessed, words tumbling out. 2 years of everything I have, money, time, heart, and it's slipping away. 1 more month of debt and it's gone. So Alexander offered a solution. 1 weekend. $100,000. Saying it aloud made her flush with shame. Enough to save everything I've worked for. Instead of judgment, understanding filled his eyes. We all have our breaking points. What's yours? She whispered. This. His hand gently touched her cheek. Watching someone genuine get pulled into our family's web of manipulation. The tenderness in his touch undid her. I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. His eyes held hers. You're just afraid to do it. Moonlight illuminated the truth between them, a connection neither had expected but both now recognized. Eli leaned closer, hesitating just a breath away, giving her the choice. Sophia closed the distance. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. Then something broke open between them, honesty, recognition, possibility. His arms encircled her waist as hers wound around his neck, the kiss deepening with an intensity that left her breathless. When they finally parted, reality crashed back. I shouldn't have done that, she whispered, though she couldn't bring herself to step away. Neither should I. His forehead rested against hers. But it's the first honest thing to happen in this house in years. The sound of voices approaching shattered the moment. Sophia stepped back, panic rising. I have to go. Sophia, Eli reached for her. I can't. She turned and hurried back toward the house. confusion and guilt warring with the undeniable truth of what had just happened. In her room, Sophia stared at her reflection. Alexander's perfect black dress, Alexander's carefully selected jewelry, her lips still warm from Eli's kiss. The woman in the mirror was caught between worlds, between truths. A sharp knock preceded Alexander's entrance. His eyes narrowed as he took in her flushed cheeks and bright eyes. "You're late. Everyone's waiting." He straightened her necklace with possessive precision. "Miranda's been asking questions. Whatever she says tonight, deny everything." His fingers lingered at her throat. "One night, Sophia. Play your part perfectly, and tomorrow you'll never have to see any of us again." The thought, which should have brought relief, now filled her with an unexpected hollowness. "Unless," Alexander added, studying her expression, "you've developed other attachments?" "No," she lied, the word ashen on her tongue. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Because I'd hate for anything to jeopardize our arrangement." His hand closed around hers, too tight to be affectionate. "Shall we?" As he led her downstairs, Sophia felt the weight of 3 paths before her: honor the contract and secure her future, follow her heart toward an uncertain connection, or walk away from both with her integrity intact but her dreams shattered. Each choice would cost her something irreplaceable. The Stone family dining room had transformed for the evening's announcement. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the table adorned with heirloom silver and fresh orchids. Charles Stone stood at the head, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo, beaming with patriarchal pride. Sophia entered on Alexander's arm, feeling every eye turn toward them. Miranda's calculating gaze, Charles's approving nod, and Eli, his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes followed her with an intensity that made her skin warm despite the room's chill. "The happy couple," Charles announced, raising his champagne flute. "Tonight, we celebrate not just love, but legacy." Servers presented the first course as Alexander guided Sophia to her seat, directly across from Eli. She kept her eyes on her plate, afraid of what her expression might reveal. "Before we begin," Miranda interjected, setting down her glass with deliberate precision, "I'd like to propose a toast of my own." Alexander's hand tightened on Sophia's knee beneath the table. "To unexpected discoveries," Miranda continued, her smile razor-sharp. "Like finding out that Sophia's event planning company, Lane Creative Events, filed for bankruptcy protection last month." The room went silent. Charles's brow furrowed. "Is this true, Sophia?" Before she could respond, Miranda pressed on. "Or discovering that the charity gala where Alexander supposedly met Sophia was actually coordinated by Rivera Events, not Lane Creative." "Miranda," Alexander warned, "this isn't the time." "Or most interesting," Miranda continued, pulling a folder from beside her chair, "finding a contract drafted by Stone International's legal department 3 weeks ago, outlining a personal services agreement between Alexander Stone and Sophia Lane." She slid the document across the table. Paragraph 1 is particularly illuminating. Party B agrees to pose as the romantic partner of Party A for the duration of one weekend family gathering. The silence that followed was deafening. Charles slowly set down his glass, his expression hardening as he turned to his son. "Alexander." Alexander's composure never wavered. "Miranda clearly misunderstands a standard NDA for Sophia's work on our upcoming engagement announcement." "Really?" Miranda arched an eyebrow. "Then perhaps Sophia can explain paragraph 7, which specifies payment of $100,000 upon successful completion of the weekend charade." All eyes turned to Sophia. The moment crystallized around her: Alexander's cold calculation, Miranda's triumphant smirk, Charles's growing anger. And Eli. His expression wasn't shock or judgment, but something worse: confirmation of what he'd already suspected. "Is this true?" Charles demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. Sophia looked at Alexander, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Stick to the script, deny everything. She thought of her failing business. The eviction notice. The loans. 100,000 reasons to lie. Then she looked at Eli, and found a single reason to tell the truth. "Yes," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's true." The admission hung in the air like shattered glass. "Sophia," Alexander hissed. She stood, removing the diamond ring that had felt so heavy since the moment he'd placed it on her finger. "I'm sorry, Mr. Stone. Alexander hired me to pretend to be his fiancée so you would believe he'd settled down enough to inherit the company." Charles's face flushed with anger. "You expect me to believe my son would stoop to such deception?" "It was my idea, father," Alexander interjected smoothly, rising to stand beside Sophia. "A necessary business strategy. You made it clear the company would only go to a family man. I simply created the family you wanted to see." "By lying? By mockery?" Charles slammed his hand on the table, rattling crystal. "This company was built on integrity." "This company was built on pragmatism," Alexander countered coldly. "On doing whatever necessary to win. You taught me that. Not like this." Charles turned to Sophia, his anger finding an easier target. "And you agreed to this charade." Shame burned through her, but she held her ground. "Yes. I needed the money to save my business." "How convenient that your principles had a price tag," Miranda remarked. "That's enough." Eli's voice cut through the tension as he stood. "Sophia at least had the courage to tell the truth. Which is more than I can say for this family." Alexander's laugh was bitter. "Always the moral compass, aren't you, little brother? Tell me, did you know about our arrangement before tonight?" Eli's eyes met Sophia's briefly. "I suspected. Yet you said nothing," Alexander pressed. "Perhaps because you developed your own interest in my hired fiancé?" Heat rushed to Sophia's face. Eli's jaw tightened. "That's it, isn't it?" Alexander's voice turned mocking. The righteous Eli Stone, falling for a woman who sells herself to the highest bidder. "How disappointing for you, Alexander," Charles thundered. But the damage was done. Hurt flashed across Eli's face before his expression closed completely. "I should go," Sophia said quietly, placing the ring on the table. "An excellent suggestion," Charles agreed coldly. "Miranda, please see that Ms. Lane receives transportation off my property immediately." "And her payment?" Miranda asked with false sweetness. "Not a cent," Alexander replied, straightening his cuffs. "The contract clearly states successful completion of the weekend. This," he gestured to the ruined dinner, "is failure." Sophia had expected this, but the finality still stung. Everything she'd worked for, gone. Yet strangely, as she looked at the Stone family's fractured tableau, she felt something like relief beneath the pain. "I'll get my things," she said with dignity she didn't know she possessed. As she turned to leave, Eli stepped forward. "Sophia." She couldn't bear to see the disappointment in his eyes. "Don't. Please." In her room, Sophia changed into her own clothes, the simple dress she'd arrived in, not the designer wardrobe Alexander had provided. She packed quickly, leaving behind everything that wasn't truly hers. A knock at the door made her heart leap, but it was only a stone-faced security guard. "Your car is waiting, Ms. Lane." As she followed him downstairs, raised voices echoed from the dining room. Charles and Alexander locked in bitter argument. Of Eli, there was no sign. Outside, rain had begun to fall, silver needles in the darkness. The security guard held an umbrella as he escorted her to a waiting town car. "Sophia." She turned to find Eli standing on the steps, rain soaking through his shirt. "I'm sorry," she said, the words inadequate for everything between them. "For which part?" His voice was carefully controlled. "The contract? Or what happened between us? For not being brave enough to tell the truth sooner." She blinked back tears. "But not for what happened between us. That was the only real thing here." For a moment, something softened in his expression. Then Miranda appeared in the doorway behind him. "Eli, your father needs you," she called. "Alexander's threatening to sell his shares." Eli hesitated, caught between family obligation and whatever had sparked between them. "Go," Sophia said softly. "They're your family." "And what about you?" he asked, rain streaming down his face. "I'll be fine." The lie tasted bitter. "I always am." Before he could respond, she slipped into the waiting car. As it pulled away, she watched his figure grow smaller in the rain, until the gates of the Stone estate closed behind her. In the back seat, Sophia finally let the tears fall. She'd lost everything: her business, the payment that would have saved it, and something else she hadn't expected to find, a connection that had felt real amid a weekend of pretense. But as the car carried her back toward her uncertain future, one thought provided strange comfort. For the first time in days, she wasn't pretending anymore. Would you have chosen truth or security? Let me know in the comments. 3 weeks later, Sophia stood in her empty studio space, the afternoon sunlight highlighting dust motes dancing in the air. The for lease sign in the window cast a long shadow across the floor she'd once polished with such pride. She ran her hand along the exposed brick wall where her company logo had hung. Lane Creative Events, her dream, her identity, now reduced to boxes in her apartment and a mountain of debt. "Last walkthrough complete," the property manager said, checking items off his clipboard. "Keys." Sophia dropped them into his outstretched palm, the metallic clink echoing with finality. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace. People rushing to meetings, chasing success, building futures. 3 weeks ago, she'd been one of them, desperate enough to compromise her integrity for a chance to keep her dream alive. Now, strangely, she felt lighter. Her tiny apartment had become command central for her reinvention. The dining table disappeared beneath job applications and half-formed business plans. Her savings would cover rent for 2 more months, not enough time to start over completely, but enough to find solid ground. She'd received exactly 0 communications from the Stone family. No legal threats, no payment, no closure. Each day, she checked her phone, telling herself she was only making sure Alexander wasn't pursuing legal action. But it was Eli's name she hoped to see. That evening, as rain tapped against her windows, Sophia sorted through her mail, mostly final notices and credit card offers. A cream-colored envelope caught her attention, heavy cardstock with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery and a check. "Ms. Lane. While my son's methods were inexcusable, I recognize that a contract is a contract. Enclosed is the agreed-upon amount. Consider this matter closed. Charles Stone." The check, $100,000, felt impossibly light in her hands. The solution to all her immediate problems, arriving when she'd finally accepted their loss. Sophia stared at it for a long moment, then placed it on her kitchen counter, propped against a coffee mug. She didn't tear it up in dramatic rejection, nor did she rush to deposit it. Instead, she let it sit there while she made tea, its presence both tempting and troubling. Money without strings, wasn't that what she'd wanted? Yet something had shifted inside her. The woman who'd driven to the Stone estate, desperate for financial salvation, no longer existed. That night, she dreamed of the gazebo by the lake, of moonlight on water, of a kiss that had felt like coming home. She woke to her phone chiming with an email notification. Bleary-eyed, she read the subject line, "Event Planning Inquiry, Coastal Book Launch." "Ms. Lane. Our publishing house is seeking an event planner for an intimate book launch on the Maine coast, scheduled for next month. The event requires someone with discretion, creativity, and an appreciation for authenticity. Budget is not a concern. If interested, please contact me for details. The author specifically requested you based on your previous work. Regards, HarperCollins Publishing." Sophia frowned. She hadn't done any previous work with HarperCollins. Her client list had been exclusively corporate events and social gatherings, not book launches. Curiosity piqued, she replied immediately, requesting more information. The response came within minutes, including event specifications, location details, and a generous proposed fee. The book was a debut novel titled The Price of Silence by E.S. Stone. Her heart stuttered. Eli. She stared at the email, reading and rereading until the words blurred. Was this a genuine request? A peace offering? Or something else entirely? Her finger hovered over the accept button. The practical voice in her head listed all the reasons to decline. The painful history, the unresolved feelings, the professional risk of mixing business with whatever had sparked between them. Yet another voice, quieter but more insistent, whispered of unfinished conversations and connections too genuine to dismiss. Before she could decide, her phone rang, an unknown number with a main area code. Sophia's hand trembled as she answered. Hello. Silence then. You probably shouldn't answer unknown calls. Journalist habit, always screening for privacy. Eli's voice, exactly as she remembered. How did you get my number? She asked, heart racing. I'm resourceful. A pause. Did you get the email? Yes. She moved to her window, looking out at the rain-slicked streets below. Why me? There are dozens of event planners with more experience in book launches. None who understand the story behind the story. His voice softened. The book is about choices, Sophia. About what we're willing to sacrifice for truth. The parallel to her own recent choice hung between them. I don't know if this is a good idea, she admitted. Probably not, he agreed. But I'd like to see you again. Properly this time. No contracts, no pretending. Outside, the rain had stopped. Morning light broke through the clouds, casting unexpected warmth across her face. On her counter, Charles's check caught the same light, a path back to what she'd lost. Beside it, her phone offered something different, not a return to the past, but a step toward something new. The launch is in 3 weeks, Eli continued when she didn't respond. Just say you'll consider it. Sophia took a deep breath. I'll consider it. The coastal road wound through towering pines, occasional glimpses of the Atlantic flashing between trees. Sophia checked the GPS again. The venue was still 10 minutes away, a private property overlooking a secluded cove. She'd spent the 3-hour drive from Boston rehearsing what she might say to Eli. Professional. Composed. Detached. Yet her racing pulse betrayed the lie in her planned performance. The road ended at a gate with a simple intercom. After identifying herself, the gate swung open to reveal a gravel drive leading to a modern structure of glass and weathered cedar. Unlike the stone estate's imposing grandeur, this home embraced its natural surroundings, almost disappearing into the landscape. Sophia parked beside the only other vehicle, a well-used Jeep with mud on its tires. Not exactly the transportation she'd expect from a stone. Before she could reach the front door, it opened. Eli stood framed in the doorway, more casual than she'd seen him at the estate. Faded jeans, a simple Henley pushed up at the sleeves. His hair was slightly longer, curling at the collar. You came, he said simply. Professional curiosity, she replied, aiming for nonchalance despite her thundering heart. I've never planned a book launch before. A smile tugged at his mouth. Is that the only reason? The question hung between them, loaded with everything unsaid. Sophia clutched her portfolio tighter. You should know I'm charging my full rate, she deflected. No discounts for previous acquaintances. I wouldn't expect otherwise. He stepped aside. Come in. The view sells the place. He wasn't exaggerating. The back of the house opened entirely to the ocean, walls of glass framing the rocky coastline and endless horizon. Manuscript pages and research materials covered a large table. A worn leather couch faced the view, a half-empty coffee mug on the floor beside it. You live here? She asked, taking it all in. For the past year. After I left Stone International, I needed somewhere to write. He moved to the kitchen, separated from the main space by a simple island. Coffee. Please. As he prepared it, Sophia studied him. The ease of his movements here compared to the tension she'd sensed at the estate. This was Eli in his element, unguarded. So, she began, accepting the mug he offered. About this book launch. Right. The book launch. He leaned against the counter. There isn't one. She blinked. Excuse me. There's a book, he clarified. It's being published next month. But there's no launch event. Understanding dawned. You lied to get me here. I prefer creative approach to reconnection. His expression turned serious. I needed to see you, Sophia. To explain. And I figured you wouldn't come if I just asked. You figured correctly. She set down her untouched coffee. I should go. Please don't. He didn't move to stop her, but something in his voice made her pause. I owe you an apology. And an explanation. For which part? She echoed his words from that rainy night. For not fighting harder when you left. He ran a hand through his hair. For letting you believe, even for a moment, that I judged you for the contract with Alexander. Didn't you? No. His answer came without hesitation. I understood it. Better than most. He moved to the table, retrieving a bound manuscript. This is my book. The one that's being published. He held it out to her. Read the dedication. Reluctantly, she took it, opening to the dedication page. 4S, who reminded me that the most valuable truth is the one that costs you something to tell. Something tightened in her chest. I don't understand. When we met, I was writing about moral compromise, about people who silence their conscience for security. His eyes held hers. Then I watched you choose truth over everything you'd worked for. It changed the entire book. Changed me. He gestured toward the ocean. Come walk with me. Please. Against her better judgment, Sophia followed him outside. A wooden staircase descended the cliff face to a small, private beach. They walked in silence until they reached the water's edge. After you left, Eli finally said, everything fell apart. Alexander and father had the fight they'd been avoiding for years. The truth came out, not just about you but about everything. Aleppo. The buried stories. The company's drift from its founding principles. What happened? Alexander left. Walked away from the inheritance, the company, all of it. Eli picked up a smooth stone, turning it in his hands. He's in Seattle now, starting his own media company. One with an ethical framework built in from the ground up. Sophia stared at him in disbelief. Alexander? Ethical framework? Turns out my brother had his own crisis of conscience watching you walk away from the money. A small smile touched his lips. He called me last week. First time we've spoken in years without arguing. I'm glad for you both, she said, meaning it despite the complicated emotions swirling inside her. What about you? He asked. Did you cash my father's check? She looked at him sharply. You knew about that? It was my suggestion. He skipped the stone across the water. I told him honoring the contract was the least he could do after what Alexander put you through. I haven't decided yet, she admitted. It feels complicated. Money usually is. He turned to face her fully. But this doesn't have to be. This. Us. The word hung between them, full of possibility. I've spent 3 weeks thinking about what I should have said that night. How I should have told you that one weekend knowing the real you was worth more than a lifetime of pretending with anyone else. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Eli. I'm not offering you a contract, Sophia. He took a step closer. I'm offering honesty. I'm drawn to you in a way I can't explain and don't want to fight. I want to know if you feel it too. The ocean breeze caught her hair as she looked up at him. This man who valued truth above comfort, who saw her most authentic self when she was playing a role. I do, she admitted quietly. But I'm scared. Last time I was at a stone property, I lost everything. Not everything. His hand gently brushed hers. You found your integrity. And maybe something else. This time, when their fingers intertwined, there was no pretense, no audience, no performance. just two people choosing connection over safety. So what happens now? She asked. Now. His smile reached his eyes, creating the creases she'd found herself thinking about for weeks. Now we start over. Properly. No roles to play, no expectations to meet. Just us, figuring out what's real. I'd like that, she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they walked along the shoreline, talking without guards or agendas, about her business ideas, his writing, the unexpected turns that had brought them to this beach. When he finally kissed her again, it felt like the beginning of a story neither had planned but both had somehow been writing all along. Not a fairy tale of billionaires and contracts, but something more valuable. A story of two people brave enough to choose truth, even when it cost them everything they thought they wanted, only to discover what they actually needed. 1 year later. Golden afternoon light streamed through the windows of Sophia's new office in downtown Portland. Authentic Events by Sophia Lane read the elegant sign on her door, a business built not on extravagant corporate functions, but on creating meaningful celebrations for clients who valued substance over spectacle. On her desk sat a framed review from the Boston Globe. Lane brings refreshing authenticity to an industry often focused on appearance over experience. Beside it stood a copy of The Price of Silence by E.S. Stone, now in its third printing, with a New York Times bestseller banner across its cover. She smiled at the worn edges. She'd read it cover to cover 3 times. Her phone chimed with a text from Eli. Finished early. Meeting still at 4? She typed back, yes. Don't forget we're meeting the caterer after. Their wedding was 3 months away, a small ceremony on the beach behind the house they now shared. Nothing extravagant, nothing for show. Just truth, witnessed by those who mattered most. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Lane? Your 3 o'clock is here. Send them in, Sophia replied, straightening papers on her desk. The door opened to reveal a familiar face she hadn't seen in nearly a year. Alexander. He looked different, more relaxed in jeans and a casual button-down, his former corporate stiffness replaced by something more genuine. Sophia. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Your assistant didn't tell you it was me? She wouldn't dare ruin the surprise. Sophia gestured to a chair. Please, sit. It's good to see you. And surprisingly, it was. The bitterness had faded, replaced by something like understanding. Eli mentioned you're in town for the media ethics conference, she said. Alexander nodded. My keynote is tomorrow. Rebuilding Trust in Journalism, a framework for ethical reporting. He laughed softly. Who would have thought? Certainly not the Alexander Stone I met a year ago. He needed a wake-up call. His expression turned serious. Which you provided, whether you meant to or not. Sophia studied him, the man who had once offered her a contract to pretend, now seemingly committed to authenticity. Your new venture is doing well, she asked. Better than expected. Turns out there's a market for honest reporting. He glanced at the engagement ring on her finger, a simple band with a small stone, nothing like the ostentatious diamond he'd once given her as a prop. And you, and my brother? Also better than expected. She couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. I'm glad. He seemed to mean it. Some contracts are meant to be broken, it seems. And some connections can't be explained by contracts at all, she replied. As they talked about his new company, her business, the upcoming wedding, Sophia marveled at life's unexpected turns. How a weekend of pretending had led to a lifetime of authenticity. How choosing truth over security had ultimately given her both. Later, walking hand in hand with Eli along the shore where they'd found their way back to each other, Sophia realized that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought, sold, or contracted. They could only be recognized, chosen, and cherished. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the courage to stop pretending. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to Love Enchanted for more emotional journeys that will leave you believing in true love. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And tell me in the comments, Would you have the courage to choose love over security when it matters most? Throughout this story, several powerful themes weave together to create a story that resonates beyond its romantic premise. At its heart, this narrative explores the tension between security and authenticity, a struggle many of us face in different forms. Sophia begins her journey valuing financial stability above all else, willing to compromise her integrity for the security she desperately needs. Her character represents how easily we can become trapped in performances when our basic needs are threatened. The Stone brothers embody opposing responses to this dilemma. Alexander initially represents the path of compromise, achieving success through calculated performances and strategic relationships. His character shows how privilege can distance us from authentic connection, creating a life that appears perfect but feels hollow. Eli, conversely, represents the cost and reward of choosing authenticity. His decision to leave wealth and security behind for his principles initially appears idealistic, even foolish. Yet his character demonstrates how honoring our truth, despite its price, ultimately leads to genuine fulfillment. The love story that develops between Sophia and Eli isn't just about romantic chemistry, it's about recognition. They see each other's authentic selves beneath carefully constructed facades. Their connection grows not from perfection but from shared vulnerability and mutual understanding of what it means to stand at the crossroads between comfort and truth. Perhaps most compelling is how the story avoids simplistic moral judgments. Alexander isn't portrayed as a villain but as someone who eventually finds his own path to authenticity. Sophia's initial choice to accept the contract isn't condemned but understood as a human response to desperate circumstances. This nuance reflects real life, where ethical choices are rarely black and white. The transformation of Sophia from someone willing to perform for security to someone brave enough to choose truth, even at great personal cost, mirrors our own potential journeys. Her growth reminds us that while pretending may offer temporary safety, only authenticity can provide lasting connection and fulfillment. In the end, the story suggests that our most valuable possessions aren't material but relational, the connections we form when we're brave enough to be seen for who we truly are. It challenges us to consider what performances we might be maintaining in our own lives and what authentic connections we might discover if we found the courage to let them go. The final reconciliation between the brothers and Sophia's ultimate success demonstrate that choosing authenticity doesn't necessarily mean sacrificing security. It may simply mean finding it in more meaningful, sustainable ways. This narrative ultimately asks, what masks are we wearing? What would happen if we removed them? And is the security of pretense worth the cost of never experiencing the profound connection that comes from being truly known?